This is Unit 14, the endocrine system. We'll look at Part A, general function. The endocrine system has two parts. Part A is a general function. This will be shown in the present video. And Part B, specifics of selected glands, to be shown in the second video. Regarding general function, we need to address control systems in general, components of the endocrine system, and a little bit about specific control of function. Cells communicate with one another. You might say that every cell in the body knows what every other cell is doing. Electrical communication involves the movement of ions through gap junctions. The cells have to be in contact with one another. Chemical communication, probably more common, involves secretion of signal molecules. The sending cell secretes the signal molecule that controls the action of another cell, the target cell. The signal is paracrine if it acts on a nearby cell, autocrine if it acts on itself. Both are sometimes called local hormones. The signal is endocrine if it's transported by the blood to its target. Signal then is a hormone, and the sending cell is an endocrine gland cell. In this course, I will refer to signals transported by the blood as hormones. The other signals I'll generally call signal molecules. The endocrine system is a control system involved in slow, long-lasting regulation of organs and tissues. These are the targets. In general, the endocrine system acts on metabolism by way of controlling enzyme activity. You might say that the endocrine system is an enzyme or metabolism controller, whereas the nervous system is a muscle controller, skeletal and smooth. A neuroendocrine system includes the nervous system and the endocrine system because the two systems are closely linked. The endocrine system has 5 components. Stimulus acts on a gland, secretes the hormone acts on the target, and the target takes an action. We're going to look at each of these in order. The stimulus is any input that increases or decreases the gland's activity. It may be molecular or it may be neural. Molecules include signal molecules, even other hormones. Other molecules, such as glucose, that stimulates the release of insulin. Nervous system input serves as a stimulus for the hypothalamus and the adrenal medulla. There are other parts of the neuroendocrine reflex. This is an exploded view of the human body. It shows some of the organs as well as many of the glands of the body. Glands may be scattered cells within an organ. This is quite common. For example, in the hypothalamus are gland cells, in the stomach, gland cells, in the intestines, in the liver, and so forth. Or gland may be a compact organ in which the entire organ is the gland. A good example is the thyroid gland or the parathyroid. Glands listed in quote are common names of several glands. Pituitary, for example, is actually 2 glands, the posterior and the anterior pituitary. The adrenal gland is 2, the medulla and the cortex. An endocrine gland secretes substances, hormones, into the blood. This is different from an exocrine gland that secretes substances through tubes or ducts, such as a sweat gland. The stimulus might be carried by the blood and acts on the endocrine gland cells. Cells secrete a hormone into the blood, and the hormone is transported to its target. The secretion and rate of time varies depending on conditions. The hormone is a signal molecule released from the endocrine gland into the blood, as we said. Hormone categories include a general hormone that acts on distant cells. Tropic hormones, they target another gland. Neurohormones are secreted by a neuron. This would be called a neurosecretory cell. Notice how similar that is with the nervous system. Hormone names can be confusing. They may be named for the target, the thyroid gland, adrenocortico, the adrenal cortex. They may be named for an action, tropic or tropin, to turn or change. Tropic hormones are hormones that stimulate another gland. So you have the adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH, or corticotropin. You have thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, or thyrotropin. Note that the word trop is different from troph, T-R-O-P-H. Troph is a different term. It refers to growth, as in hypertrophy, or nourishment, as in trophoblast. They may be named releasing hormones. These are hormones that stimulate another gland to release the hormone. For example, corticotropin releasing hormone, CRH. They may be named inhibiting hormones, IH. This would be a hormone that inhibits another gland from secreting a hormone. For example, growth hormone inhibiting hormone, VHIH. The hormones fall into several molecular categories. Usually they are steroids or derived from proteins. Steroids are lipid soluble. They include sex hormones and adrenal cortex hormones. Proteins are usually water soluble and include proteins like insulin and oxytocin, peptides like the pituitary hormones, and amino acids like the thyroid hormones. Now, this one happens to be lipid soluble. What about the transport of hormones? Water-soluble hormones are transported in solution in the plasma, the liquid part of the blood. Lipid-soluble hormones, on the other hand, are transported bound to plasma proteins, especially albumins. Thyroid hormones are bound to a thyroid binding globulin, for example. Cortisol is bound to transcortin. The advantage of bound hormones is it does not change the osmotic pressure of the blood. Also, the hormone can last longer in the blood. Often, the hormone is transported in an inactive state. Hormones must be removed from the blood. After all, the control system must be turned off as well as being turned on. Hormones are removed by broken down by the liver. For example, epinephrine and norepinephrine are removed by a liver enzyme called catechol-O-methyltransferase. It happens in 1 to 2 minutes. The hormone is very active for only 10 to 30 seconds. The hormone may be excreted by the kidney. It may be inactivated by target cells. Metabolic clearance refers to the rate of removal. The half-life is the time needed to remove 1/2 of the hormone. Growth hormone, the half-life is 6 to 20 minutes. Thyroxine, it may be up to 2 weeks. What about the target? The target may be a cell, a tissue, an organ. It may be the entire body. The hormone will bind to a receptor. The receptor may be located on the surface of the target cell or inside the target cell. Steroid hormones bind to intracellular receptors. The hormone receptor complex then binds to a specific site on the DNA and has an effect on protein synthesis. Other hormones bind to cell surface receptors located on the plasma membrane. Because the cell surface receptor is some distance away from the site of action, an internal message must be transmitted from the receptor to the site of action. This is called a second messenger. Often the second messenger operates in very complex ways. One includes, for example, cyclic AMP. It's activated from a substance called adenyl cyclase, and cyclic AMP then activates an inactive protein kinase, which in turn activates enzymes that carry out many different functions. This operates by way of a G protein. Roughly 60% of therapeutic drugs act on the G protein. Calcium ions are another common second messenger. Prostaglandins are a group of second messengers. The action, in general, the action acts on chemical reactions, metabolism. As we said, you might think of the endocrine system as a metabolism regulator. Chemical reactions, as you know, require enzymes. Where does the cell get enzymes? Protein synthesis. Examples of the metabolic effect include protein synthesis, energy generation, membrane transport, to add or remove from storage, called mobilization, enzyme activity to increase or decrease chemical reactions in general. In the diagram, the heavy arrows represent enzyme activity. Yes, it looks pretty complicated. Gluconeogenesis is the formation of glucose from non-glucose compounds, for example, fatty acids in the liver during exercise, or from amino acids during starvation. Glycogenolysis is the breakdown of glycogen. Lysis means to dissolve, and of course, glycogen is the glycogen. That's to break down the glycogen into glucose. Control of hormone function generally involves negative feedback or feedback inhibition. This concept was introduced in the first unit of the course. This is a type of control in which the output reverses the input. Often glands influence other glands with negative feedback loop. The glands will have receptors for the hormones. Positive feedback, on the other hand, is rare in living systems because the output enhances the input. It does occur, for example, in childbirth. Oxytocin stimulates the uterus to contract. Contraction of the uterus stimulates further secretion of oxytocin to further contract the uterus. If your home furnace operated on positive feedback, when the furnace came on and produced heat, the increased heat would keep the furnace on or turn it even hotter, and this would continue until your house burned down. Cyclical control is often involved in hormone function. Growth hormone release, for example, varies with time of day. It increases in the first few hours of sleep. ACTH and cortisol increase morning and tend to decrease in the afternoon. Disorders of endocrine system function often include hyposecretion, that is a decrease, or hypersecretion, an increase. This is the end of Part A. You're now ready to continue with Unit 14, Part B, Specifics of Endocrine Glands.